I came home to my own apartment and found a con man eating my steak while my girlfriend bagged up my life. I walked into my own apartment, my name on the lease, my money paying the rent every single month for 2 straight years without missing a single payment. And there was Bryce, sitting at the head of my dining table like he owned the place, cutting into the ribeye steak I had bought yesterday from the butcher shop 3 blocks over. My steak, the one I had been looking forward to grilling all week after pulling 3 consecutive 14-hour shifts at work trying to close a case for a major client. Meanwhile, Megan was in the corner of the living room stuffing my clothes into garbage bags like she was cleaning out a dead man's closet, not packing them neatly into boxes like a normal person would do, not folding them and putting them in luggage. No, black hefty bags, the kind you use for lawn waste and household trash. That's what she thought my belongings were worth. I stood there for a moment just taking in the scene. The love of my life, the woman I had spent 3 years building a future with, was throwing my possessions away. And some random guy I had never seen before was sitting in my chair, at my table, eating my food, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. Didn't throw anything or put my fist through the drywall, like most guys probably would have. I just stood there in the doorway, dropped my keys on the counter with a heavy metallic clank that echoed through the apartment and made them both freeze mid-motion. Bryce's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Megan's hands went still inside one of the hefty bags. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before Megan decided to break it with what might be the most delusional sentence I've ever heard come out of another human's mouth. "You're stifling my frequency, Cole," she said, without even looking me in the eye. She shoved my favorite hoodie, the one from my college track days that I'd kept for almost a decade, into the garbage bag like it was contaminated. Bryce explained it to me. "You're an energy anchor. You're keeping me in a scarcity mindset, and I can't ascend if I'm tethered to someone who operates on such a low vibration." I stood there processing those words. Energy anchor, scarcity mindset, ascend, low vibration. This was coming from a woman who, 6 months ago, would have laughed anyone using those terms out of the room. This was coming from the same woman who once called motivational speakers professional con artists at a dinner party and got a standing ovation from 3 of our friends. I looked at Bryce. This guy was 36 years old, wearing designer sunglasses indoors like we were in a Miami nightclub, instead of my living room in the middle of Ohio on a random Tuesday afternoon. His teeth were too white, not naturally white either. Fake veneers that looked like someone had installed a row of bathroom tiles in his mouth. The kind of teeth that scream I spent money I don't have trying to look successful. He was wearing a t-shirt that said Quantum Abundance across the chest in gold lettering. Probably cost $300 and looked like something you'd find at a thrift store in Venice Beach. His hair was slicked back with so much product it looked wet, and he had one of those groomed stubble beards that takes more maintenance than most people put into their entire appearance. Everything about this guy screamed fraud. Everything about him looked like a costume designed to convince desperate people that he had answers they needed. He smiled at me while chewing my ribeye. Didn't even have the decency to stop eating while he delivered his little speech. "It's nothing personal, brother," Bryce said, pointing his fork at me like he was about to drop some profound wisdom. "Some people are destined for the stratosphere, and some are just gravity. Megan is ready to launch." He paused for effect. "You're just holding on to the launch pad." The launch pad. I let that phrase roll around in my brain for a moment. This guy was sitting in my apartment, eating my food, wearing my bathrobe, and telling me that I was the launch pad that my girlfriend needed to escape from. "You mean this apartment?" I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm. "The one I pay for. The one where you're currently eating my dinner that I bought with my money. Material possessions are an illusion," Bryce smirked, sawing off another piece of my steak. "But sure, if you want to get technical, Megan needs this space for her creative flow. The mastermind group needs a headquarters." He looked me up and down. "You don't fit the aesthetic." It took my brain about 5 seconds to fully process the sheer insanity of what was happening here. My girlfriend of 3 years. The woman I had spent the last 24 months building a life with. The woman I was literally planning to propose to next month with a ring I'd already put a deposit on. She was evicting me from my own apartment because some guy she met 3 weeks ago at a wealth activation seminar told her I was bad for her aura. 3 weeks. That's all it took. 21 days for this snake oil salesman to dismantle everything we had built together. "Megan," I said, stepping past the garbage bags full of my belongings. "Put the clothes down. Bryce, get out of my apartment. Now." "I see," Megan snapped, finally making eye contact with me. Her eyes were wide, almost manic. She looked like she hadn't slept properly in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed. That fervent glow that cult members get when they've fully bought into the doctrine. This is exactly what Bryce warned me about. The aggression. The control. You're trying to block my abundance because you're jealous of my growth. I'm jealous of your growth, I repeated, letting out a cold, dry laugh that had zero humor in it. Megan, 3 weeks ago we were looking at houses together. We had appointments with real estate agents. We were talking about school districts and backyards and whether we wanted a two-car garage. Now you're speaking in bumper sticker slogans and kicking me out of my own home because this con artist told you to. Bryce stood up then. He wasn't big, maybe 5'9" on a good day, 160 pounds soaking wet. But he carried himself with that unearned confidence that certain men develop when they've never been punched in the face enough times in their lives. That kind of confidence that comes from successfully scamming people who are too trusting or too desperate to see through the act. Careful with your words, Cole, he said, holding up his hands in that fake, peaceful gesture that manipulators love. Low-frequency insults reflect your own internal trauma. We're just asking you to leave peacefully so Megan can step into her power. I looked at the garbage bags lined up against the wall. 6 of them, all filled with my stuff. My clothes, my books, my running shoes, the small box of things I'd kept from my father after he passed. All of it shoved into black plastic bags like garbage on collection day. Then I looked at Megan. She was trembling, but not with fear. It was that weird fanatical adrenaline that people get when they've been sleep-deprived and fed a steady diet of nonsense until their brain stops functioning correctly. She looked like someone who had been reprogrammed. I'm not leaving, I said flatly. Then we'll make you, Megan said. Her voice cracked a little, but her jaw was set. And that's when she dropped the bomb. I changed the locks an hour ago, she announced. Bryce called a locksmith. This is our sanctuary now. The police won't help you. It's a civil matter. She smiled. Actually smiled, like she was proud of herself. Bryce knows the laws. My blood ran cold. Not because I was scared of these 2 clowns. Bryce looked like a stiff breeze would knock him over. And Megan weighed maybe 120 pounds. This wasn't a physical threat situation. No, my blood ran cold because I realized the person standing in front of me wasn't Megan anymore. This was a shell. A hollowed-out version of the woman I had loved for 3 years, now filled up with Bryce's toxic sludge like some kind of puppet. 3 years. We had been through job losses together, family deaths, a car accident that put her in the hospital for 2 weeks. I was there every single day, bringing her food, helping her with physical therapy, making sure she had everything she needed. And now she was bagging up my clothes and telling me I was an energy anchor. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose my composure. I grabbed my laptop bag from the hook by the door, took one long look at the steak on the plate, half eaten, and nodded. Okay, I said, my voice so calm it almost scared me. If that's how you want to play it. I turned around and walked out. I heard Bryce laugh behind me as the door closed. See, babe, the universe clears the path when you demand it. They thought they had won. They thought I was walking away defeated, probably going to cry in my car somewhere, and eventually crawl back begging for forgiveness. They thought they had pulled off some kind of cosmic victory by kicking a guy out of his own apartment. What they didn't know was that I wasn't leaving to wallow in self-pity. See, here's the thing about me that Megan should have remembered from the 3 years we spent together. I'm a forensic accountant. I work for a firm that handles high-end corporate litigation. My entire job, every single day, is to look at financial records and find what people are trying to hide. I trace dirty money. I uncover fake invoices. I expose shell companies and fraudulent transactions. I've helped put white-collar criminals in prison. I've recovered millions of dollars for clients who got ripped off by professional con artists. Dismantling false narratives and finding hidden dirt isn't just my job, it's my art form. And Bryce Ascend, or whatever his real name was, had just made himself my new project. I checked into a hotel down the street. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with a decent Wi-Fi connection and a desk I could work at. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my laptop, then opened my banking app. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, from pure, concentrated rage. I expected what I was about to see. I had a feeling in my gut the moment I walked into that apartment and saw the garbage bags. But actually seeing it confirmed on the screen still felt like getting punched in the stomach. The joint savings account. The house fund that Megan and I had been building together for 2 solid years. Every month we each deposited money into that account. It was supposed to be our future, our down payment, our fresh start as homeowners. We had even given it a little nickname. The Foundation Fund. Balance. $0 transfer history. $52,500. Wired to Ascendancy Unlimited LLC. Yesterday at 4:17 p.m. $52,500. Gone in a single transaction while I was at work crunching numbers on a corporate fraud case, completely unaware that I was being robbed at the same time. That money represented 2 years of sacrifice. Every overtime shift I worked, every bonus I earned, Every time I said no to a vacation or a new car or anything else because we were saving for our future, all of it transferred to some LLC I had never heard of because my girlfriend got brainwashed by a guy she met at a seminar. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. The number 0.00 seemed to glow on the screen like a taunt. I thought about the Megan from 6 months ago. She was a landscape architect at a respected firm downtown. Talented, grounded, sharp as a tack. She had this dry sense of humor that could cut through any tension. She hated pretentious people with a passion that bordered on religious. She would call out anyone who tried to act superior or sell people dreams they couldn't deliver. She once spent an entire dinner party systematically dismantling a guy who claimed he was a life coach, and everyone at the table had applauded. We met at a friend's wedding 4 years ago. She was wearing a green dress and laughing at something the bartender said, and I remember thinking she was the most real person in a room full of people trying to be someone they weren't. We talked for 3 hours that night and exchanged numbers. Our first date was a hiking trail outside the city, and by the end of it, I knew I was in trouble. We moved in together after a year, started the savings fund 6 months later. We talked about the future all the time, what kind of house we wanted, how many kids, whether we'd get a dog first or wait until after we had a yard. Normal couple stuff. The kind of conversations that make you feel like you're actually building something. Then her firm went through a round of layoffs. She didn't lose her job, but the stress of watching her colleagues get let go one by one got to her. She started feeling lost, questioning everything about her career and her life choices. That's when she found Bryce's podcast, The Quantum Millionaire. At first, I thought it was harmless, just some motivational stuff to help her through a rough patch. Positive thinking, visualization, whatever. If it made her feel better about the uncertainty at work, I wasn't going to criticize it. But then the headphones never came off. She was listening to that podcast during breakfast, during dinner, before bed. Then came the live seminars, $500 a ticket for a seat in a hotel conference room to listen to Bryce talk about quantum energy and vibrational frequencies for 4 hours. Then came the Inner Circle coaching calls, $2,000 a month for weekly video calls, where Bryce would tell her she was special and destined for greatness. I tried to talk to her about it. I tried using logic and reason, the things that used to work with the old Megan. Meg, I asked one night, why does a billionaire mentor need your $2,000 a month? If he's so wealthy, why is he charging people for advice? She looked at me like I was the one who didn't understand reality. It's an energy exchange, Cole. You have to invest to signal to the universe that you're ready to receive. You wouldn't understand. You're too stuck in scarcity thinking. I didn't realize at the time that what she was actually signaling was, I am an easy mark. Please rob me. I closed the banking app and opened my laptop browser. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I had a can of energy drink from the vending machine and a vendetta that could power a small city. Time to find out who Bryce Ascend really was. I cracked my knuckles and got to work. This was what I did for a living. This was what I was good at. Finding the truth that people tried to bury under layers of lies and legal structure. The difference was that usually I was doing this for corporate clients paying $500 an hour. Tonight it was personal. I started with the obvious. Ascendancy Unlimited LLC. Quick search showed it was registered in Delaware 3 months ago. No surprise there. Delaware is where people register shell companies when they want to hide who actually owns them. The registered agent was a generic legal services company that handles thousands of registrations. Dead end in terms of finding the actual ownership. So I went for Bryce directly, or rather, Bryce Ascend, the name he used on all his social media and his website. I ran a reverse image search on his profile picture, the main one he used everywhere, the one where he's leaning against a red Ferrari with a cigar in his hand, looking like he just closed a deal that made him millions. That picture was on his website, his Instagram, his podcast thumbnails. It was the image that sold the dream. The Ferrari was a rental. Found that within 5 minutes. The photo was tagged by a rental agency in Miami from 3 years ago. Some promotional thing they did for social media influencers. Bryce had apparently gotten a 2-hour photo shoot with the car in exchange for tagging their business. Classic fake it till you make it stuff. But the face match brought up something much more interesting than a rented sports car. A mugshot from 2018. Maricopa County, Arizona. Name, Bryce Jonathan Mercer. Charges, wire fraud, running a Ponzi scheme involving something called organic crypto farming, selling fake timeshares in a resort that didn't exist. Gotcha, I whispered to the empty hotel room. But here's the thing about dealing with someone who's been brainwashed. If I ran straight to Megan right now with this mugshot, she wouldn't believe it. She'd say the system was trying to silence him. She'd say it was part of his hero's journey, proof that he was a threat to the establishment. Bryce had probably already prepared her for this exact scenario, told her that people would try to show her evidence against him and that she should reject it as attacks from low-vibrational people. I needed to do more than just find dirt. I needed to dismantle Bryce Mercer so completely that nothing could grow back. I needed to scorch the earth. I spent the next 3 days working remotely from that hotel room, told my boss I had a family emergency and needed to work from home. He didn't ask questions. I was one of his best investigators, and he trusted me to get my work done. I didn't call Megan, didn't answer her texts either. They had shifted tone pretty quickly. Day 1 was full of messages about how toxic I was, how I was trying to keep her small. Day 2 switched to, I hope you're healing too. We need to discuss when you're picking up the rest of your boxes. By day 3, she was asking if we could talk like mature adults about separating our finances. Oh, we were going to separate our finances, all right. Just not the way she was expecting. I tracked down the other mentors listed on Bryce's website, his inner circle of enlightened teachers who were supposedly helping people achieve quantum abundance. 2 of them were stock photos, literally just pictures bought from a stock photo website with fake names attached. I found the original images on 3 different corporate websites being used for their About Us pages. One of the mentors was actually real, a guy named Sven, who was listed as the Director of Spiritual Integration. Turns out he was a struggling actor in Los Angeles who had been hired to do video testimonials. I found his profile on a casting website where he advertised himself as available for corporate videos and infomercials. Guy was charging $200 per video, and Bryce had probably paid him to film a dozen testimonials about how the program changed his life. Then I found the real gold, a forum thread from 2 years ago about a guy running a scheme called Dropshipping University. The guy was named Bryce M. Same Playbook. Promised people they could make thousands working from home with minimal effort, charge them for courses and one-on-one coaching, disappear when the complaints started piling up and the authorities got interested. The victims in that thread were heartbreaking to read about. Single moms who had spent their entire savings trying to build a better life for their kids. Veterans who had been told they could finally achieve the financial freedom they deserved after serving their country. Elderly people on fixed incomes who got convinced this was their last chance at prosperity before they ran out of time. Bryce had drained them all dry and then vanished into thin air, popping up 6 months later with a new name, a new scheme, and a whole new batch of vulnerable targets. I spent hours reading through those forum posts. The stories were all the same. People who were going through hard times, job losses, divorces, health problems, financial stress, and then Bryce would appear like some kind of predator who could smell weakness. He'd reach out through social media or LinkedIn, compliment them, make them feel special, tell them he saw potential in them that others had missed, and then he'd slowly reel them in until they were handing over their life savings for the promise of transformation. Now I had the pattern. This wasn't some guy who made a few mistakes in his past and was trying to turn his life around. This was a serial predator who had refined his techniques over years of practice. He knew exactly how to identify vulnerable people, how to build their trust, and how to extract as much money as possible before moving on to the next victim. And Megan had walked right into his trap during the lowest point in her professional life. The next step was my own lease agreement. I pulled up the documents I had saved in my cloud storage. There it was in black and white. The lease for my apartment was in my name alone. I had signed it 2 years ago before Megan moved in with me. She was never added to the lease because we figured we'd be buying a house soon anyway. Why bother with the paperwork? That decision was about to become very important. I looked up the state laws on unlawful lockouts. In my state, if someone changes the locks on a tenant without going through proper eviction procedures, that's illegal. Doesn't matter who lives there. Doesn't matter what civil dispute you think you have. You can't just change the locks and kick someone out. I called my landlord, Mr. Wallace. Older guy, ran a tight ship, didn't tolerate drama. I explained the situation calmly and professionally. Someone was in my apartment who wasn't on the lease. They had changed the locks without authorization. I needed to regain access to my own residence. Mr. Wallace was not happy, not with me, but with the situation. He had dealt with problematic tenants before, but having someone illegally take over an apartment was a new one even for him. I'll meet you there tomorrow morning, he said. We'll sort this out. The next morning, I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex with a small entourage. Mr. Wallace was there with his master key. A sheriff's deputy was there because I had explained that the occupants might be hostile, and I had a folder under my arm containing everything I had found on Bryce Mercer, printed and organized, ready to present. Mr. Wallace knocked on the door. Maintenance inspection, he called out, required access to the unit. Silence from inside. He used his master key. The new lock Bryce had installed wasn't compatible with the building's master system, which was itself a violation of the lease terms. The smell hit me first when the door opened. Sage, like someone had been burning incense constantly. stale takeout, sweat. The place smelled like a commune that had stopped caring about hygiene. My apartment, my meticulously clean, minimalist apartment that I had spent 2 years turning into a comfortable home, it was destroyed. There were whiteboards everywhere, giant ones propped against the walls, covered in diagrams and flowcharts with words like vortex and quantum revenue and abundance pipeline written in red marker. Some of them had actual permanent marker drawings on the walls themselves, not on paper taped to the walls, on the actual paint. Drawings and words and arrows connecting concepts that made absolutely no sense. Empty pizza boxes covered the kitchen counter, stacked 3 high in some places. Energy drink cans and takeout containers scattered around the living room. Clothes everywhere on the floor, draped over furniture, hanging off doorknobs. My couch had a mysterious stain on it that I decided I didn't want to know the origin of. The hardwood floors I had kept polished looked like they hadn't been swept in days. It looked like a tornado had gone through a frat house and deposited the debris in my living room. It smelled like a combination of incense, body odor, and despair. Megan was standing in the middle of this chaos, wearing the same pajamas she'd had on 3 days ago when she kicked me out. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes had gotten worse. Her hair was greasy and unwashed, hanging limp around her face. She had lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. Her cheekbones stood out more sharply than they should have. She looked sick, not just tired, sick. Like someone who had been running on adrenaline and belief for so long that her body was starting to shut down. Bryce was behind her, and I kid you not, he was wearing my silk bathrobe, the one my mother had given me for Christmas 2 years ago. He had it tied loosely, showing off his chest like he was about to do a photo shoot for a wellness magazine. "Officer, this man is harassing us," Bryce said, trying to project authority while wearing a bathrobe 2 sizes too big for him. "This is a civil dispute." He moved out voluntarily. The deputy stepped forward. He was a big guy, built like a linebacker, with that no-nonsense expression that comes from dealing with too many delusional people in his career. "Are you Bryce Jonathan Mercer?" he asked. The mask slipped. Just for a second, Bryce's confident guru expression flickered into something else. Fear. The look of a man who had been caught before and recognized what was about to happen. My spiritual name is Bryce Ascend," he stammered. "Yeah, well, Bryce Jonathan Mercer. I have a warrant for your arrest regarding an outstanding fraud charge in Arizona and a fresh inquiry for grand larceny regarding a transfer of $52,500 from Mr. Cole's account without authorization." Megan let out a shriek. "What? No. That money was an investment. Cole signed off on it spiritually." "That's not how banking law works," the deputy said flatly. I stepped forward, pulling out my folder. "I didn't sign off on anything," I said, looking directly at Megan. She looked ragged. In just 4 days, she had aged a decade. The woman I used to love was buried somewhere under layers of manipulation and sleep deprivation. "You forged my consent on the wire transfer, Meg. I checked the digital signature logs. You used my iPad password, the one I gave you so you could watch movies while I was at work." She started crying. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of someone whose plans were falling apart. "It's for our future," she screamed. "Bryce is going to triple that money in a week. We're buying an island, Cole. A literal island. Why can't you see the vision?" "There is no island," I said. I threw the folder on the coffee table, and the contents spread out. Photos of Bryce's mugshot, printouts from the forum threads detailing his previous victims, the stock photo receipts showing his fake mentor team, the casting profile of the actor he hired for testimonials. He's not a guru, Meg. He's a homeless con man with a gambling addiction who targets women through LinkedIn and Instagram. He doesn't have an investment portfolio. He has a warrant in Arizona and a trail of destroyed lives. Megan stared at the mugshot. Her own face looked back at her through Bryce's eyes. They had the same hollow look, the same desperation. Then she looked at Bryce. Bryce was already backing toward the balcony door, his eyes darting around for an exit. "These are deep fakes," he stammered. Sweat was beading on his forehead, running down into the collar of my bathrobe. "The Matrix creates evidence to stop the chosen ones, Megan. Don't look at the 3D lies. Look at my soul. You know my truth. Your truth owes me $52,000, I said. The deputy moved forward with handcuffs. Bryce started screaming about constitutional rights and sovereign citizenship and how the maritime law of the land didn't apply to quantum beings operating at a higher frequency. It was pathetic. All that confidence, all that guru energy, all that talk about ascending to the stratosphere melted away the second the metal cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. He was crying by the time they got him to the door. Actually crying. Tears streaming down his face, snot running from his nose. The transformation was almost surreal. One minute he was a confident wealth guru who had all the answers. The next he was a sobbing con man being arrested in a bathrobe that didn't belong to him. As they dragged him toward the door, Bryce looked at Megan one last time. His face was red, sweaty, desperate. All pretense of spiritual enlightenment was gone. "Babe, bail me out. Use the credit card." "The one I gave you. It's just a test from the universe. We're almost at the breakthrough. This is the final obstacle before our abundance manifests." And then he was gone. Out the door. Out of my apartment. Out of Megan's life, whether she realized it yet or not. I watched through the window as they put him in the back of the squad car. He was still talking, still trying to explain to anyone who would listen that this was all a misunderstanding, that the charges were false, that he was being targeted because he was a threat to the system. Nobody was listening. The silence in the apartment was heavy after the door closed. The kind of heavy that comes after a storm finally passes, and you're left looking at the damage, assessing what can be salvaged and what needs to be thrown away. Mr. Wallace looked around the apartment with undisguised disgust. His eyes tracked across the marker on the walls, the debris everywhere, the whiteboards covered in nonsense. "Cole, I like you. You've been a good tenant for 2 years. But this." He gestured at the destroyed walls. "You're losing your deposit. Get this place fixed within 30 days or you're out too." He left. It was just me and Megan. She was still holding one of the mugshot printouts. Her hands were trembling. The manic energy was gone, replaced by something worse. Dawning horror. The slow realization of what she had done. "He said he managed hedge funds," she whispered. Her voice was broken, barely audible. "He told me he had clients all over the world. He said he saw something special in me, that I was different from the others. He managed a shift manager position at a Taco Bell in 2016, I said coldly. I checked his employment history too. Before that, he worked at a car wash. Before that, he was in county jail for writing bad checks. She looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were different tears now. Not frustration? Shame? Cole, She took a shaky breath. He made it sound so real. Every day he would tell me I was powerful, that I was destined for something bigger, that you were holding me back from my potential. She took a step toward me. "I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this. I just wanted us to be free. I wanted us to have everything. We can fix this, right? We can call the bank. We can explain what happened. It was fraud. They'll give the money back." I looked at her. I looked at the mess surrounding us. I looked at the permanent markers scrawled across my walls. Words like ascend and quantum wealth and limitless, written in letters a foot high. I looked at the garbage bags that still contained my belongings. I looked at the pizza boxes and the takeout containers and the whiteboards covered in nonsense. And I realized I felt nothing. The anger was gone. It had burned so hot for the past 4 days that it had finally exhausted itself. The love was gone too. Whatever I had felt for Megan before this happened had been systematically destroyed by her actions over the past week. In its place was just exhaustion, and the cold clarity that comes after you've processed something terrible and come out the other side. This woman had been my best friend, my partner, my future, and in less than a month, she had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could look me in the eye and tell me I was toxic while packing my dead father's belongings into trash bags. The Megan I fell in love with would never have done this. But the Megan standing in front of me right now was the one who had, and I couldn't separate them anymore. They were the same person. The capability for this had always been inside her. Bryce had just found the key to unlock it. "The bank is already investigating," I said. "But here's the problem, Meg. You authorized that transfer using my credentials. You used my iPad. You knew my password. Technically speaking, that's wire fraud on your part. I told the police I wouldn't press charges against you if the money is returned. But Bryce already spent a chunk of it. Marketing materials for his next scheme. VIP tables at clubs. Rental cars. About 20,000 is just gone. "I'll pay you back," she sobbed. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "I'll work double shifts. I'll sell everything I own. Cole, please, I love you. I was just lost. I was scared about work, and he found me when I was vulnerable. It wasn't really me. I was brainwashed. You kicked me out," I said quietly. "You packed my dead father's belongings into a garbage bag. You let another man wear my clothes, eat my food, sleep in my bed. You called me toxic for wanting to keep the money we saved together, the money that was supposed to buy us a house, start our family. You threw all of that away for a guy you knew for 3 weeks because he told you that you were special. I was brainwashed," she pleaded again. "It wasn't me." "Maybe," I said, "but the person who did all those things, she's still in there somewhere, and I can't sleep next to her anymore." I walked over to the door and held it open. "You need to leave, Megan." She froze. Her face went pale. "What? Go where? I gave up my apartment when I moved in here. I don't have anywhere to go. Go to your parents, go to a friend, go to a hotel, go manifest a penthouse. I don't care. But you're not staying here anymore. Cole, please. It's been 4 days. You can't throw away 3 years over a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, I said, and my voice had gone hard. A mistake is leaving the oven on. Stealing my life savings and replacing me with a convicted felon in 48 hours isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And choices have consequences. She cried for an hour. She begged. She bargained. She apologized. She got angry. She threw the "you're toxic" line at me one more time when she realized begging wasn't going to work. She cycled through every emotional manipulation tactic she had probably learned from Bryce's playbook. None of it worked. Eventually, she packed a bag. The same kind of bag she had tried to force me to take 4 days earlier. She walked out of the apartment without looking back, and I closed the door behind her. That was 6 months ago. The legal fallout hit fast and hard. Bryce got transferred to Arizona within 2 weeks because he had violated his parole by leaving the state and running financial schemes while on supervised release. The Arizona DA added my case to an existing investigation, and suddenly my $52,000 became part of a much bigger picture. My report was what cracked the whole thing open. Once the authorities realized Bryce was active again, they started digging into Ascendancy Unlimited with subpoenas and forensic audits. They found over 200 victims across 6 states. People who had paid for coaching, for courses, for investment opportunities that existed only in Bryce's imagination. Total damages came out to $1.8 million. I got called to testify at his sentencing hearing 3 months later. Flew out to Phoenix on my own dime just to look him in the eye one more time. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of a Quantum Abundance t-shirt. No sunglasses, no fake smile, just a scared con man who finally ran out of people to manipulate. The judge gave him 7 years. I watched them lead him out of the courtroom in shackles. He didn't look at me once. I got about $30,000 of my money back through the restitution process. The rest was gone. Bryce had burned through it on marketing material, VIP tables at clubs where he recruited victims, and rental cars to keep up appearances. The lifestyle of a fake millionaire gets expensive when you're funding it with stolen money. Megan got hit with her own legal problems. The wire fraud charge stuck because she had used my credentials without authorization. She pleaded down to a misdemeanor and got 2 years probation, plus a court-ordered payment plan. $500 a month to me until the remaining balance is paid off. That's going to take her about 4 years at this rate. The first check arrived 6 weeks after the sentencing. I deposited it without any particular feeling, just business. I spent the first month after everything happened fixing up the apartment. Took 3 coats of primer and 2 coats of paint to cover up the marker on the walls. The words kept bleeding through the first 2 attempts. Had to replace the couch, the dining chairs, and most of the kitchen supplies. Hired a cleaning crew to do a deep scrub because I couldn't get the smell of sage and body odor out of the carpet myself. Cost me about $4,000 total to undo what they did in 4 days. Added that to the itemized list I submitted to the court. Work became my focus. I took on extra cases, worked late, came in on weekends. My boss noticed the output spike and gave me a promotion 2 months in. Senior forensic analyst with a 15% raise. I was closing cases faster than anyone else in the department because I had developed a new appreciation for catching people who thought they could get away with fraud. Megan tried to contact me a few times. First, it was emails. Long ones full of words like healing journey and accountability work and trauma response. I deleted them without reading past the subject line. Then she tried calling. I blocked the number. Then she showed up at my apartment one Saturday afternoon, 3 months after everything went down. I opened the door and she was standing there holding a coffee, looking like she had rehearsed whatever she was about to say. I have things I need to tell you, she started. I closed the door in her face, didn't say a word, just shut it, and went back to watching the game. She knocked for about 5 minutes, then gave up. I heard her crying in the hallway before she finally left. I felt nothing. A mutual friend told me last month that Megan is dating someone new. Some guy who calls himself a crypto visionary and promises 1,000% returns within weeks. She met him at a wealth building workshop downtown. Same pattern, different predator. Some people just keep walking into the same trap over and over again. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.